It is instant match reaction for, it's currently City 3, Everton 0. There's about 2 or 3 minutes left. But the match isn't going anywhere at the moment. I am joined by Mark Moosey. Trying to bring a bit of levity to this. Mark, we're in a pub in the Lake District here. Do you want to describe what it's like? Paint a picture for our listeners of the environment we're in.
We have had a lovely weekend here, and the food today has been, do you know what, acceptable. But if the service was to be described in any one particular word, the only one I've really got for it at the moment is Everton. So it's I need say no more to the people listening about what sort of standard that is. But yeah, I think not only because of the personal experience that we've had today, but I think from a footballing point of view, it's just been the most quintessentially Everton 2 hours of my life. Seeing a football team come into a game who are clearly decimated by injuries and suspensions, and just unfortunately having a collection of absolutely terrible footballers, but to put in a performance against, yes, one of the Premier League's greatest ever teams, of course, but they really haven't played well, and we're still on 89 minutes. I'm still waiting for Man City to actually kick into anything other than second gear, and the fact that I'm not saying that none of us expected to not get beat today, because that's unfortunately just the nature of what this game means for Everton in the last few years. But I think the level of just I think that the summary I'd make for it today is when you saw all of the players coming on after half time for the start of the second half, absolutely didn't want to be there. Did not want to be there, because they just knew what this second half looked like. We wouldn't have a shot on target, which I don't think we have in the second half. There's no real impact that we can make in any particular area of the pitch. And yes, again, we'll go back to the fact that we are depleted in so many areas, but as we look at the away end now on screen, which has got about 4 people left in, credit to anyone who's really made that effort today, because it's been a really, really dismal 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's been shocking, and as we sit here watching now, Everton are finishing this game with their central midfielders Tyler and Yango and Andros Townsend. So that's sort of where we are at this point in the campaign, but I think you're right in regards to us. just got to laugh at Nick Preble here cheering for corners on his bet. Everton have got the chance of a late consolation, but I think all the goals, all the very different. They come from similar situations, don't they? Where I speak to Dave Mooney in the week about City and the way to get at them. He said our Palace beat them was they got about them and they pressed them and they tried to mix it up and win the ball back and transition from there. And the corner's predictably gone straight into the hands of Ederson. But all the goals that we can see today are Everton being deep and not being able to get out quick enough. The first one, Cancelo has got so much time on the ball. It's a ridiculous pass, don't get me wrong, but he picks out the man with so much time. Rodri again, edge of the box, no one really near him, no one closing him down quick enough, and the same with the third one. It's a shot which deflects into the path of Bernardo Silva, and I don't know if it's a case of Everton going there and setting up that way and thinking it's the best way to necessarily win it, or just the players we haven't got the players at the moment to go and do it. It's it's hard to watch, isn't it, like that? I think if you're going to play like this and you're going to constantly play like this, you need to be getting results, and unfortunately we're in a situation now where by the time we kick off next weekend against Brentford, it's going to be 2 months since Everton won a football match in the Premier League.
Well, we're going to go on to what Everton are going to look like in that Brentford game, which quite honestly, beyond the back four and Jordan Pickford is anyone's guess. But I think that the way that we've set up in this game, and I think what you were alluding to in terms of how we play, we look like how a bottom half team approaches most games. In particular, this one, where
which is what we are.
We are at the moment, but you classically sit deep and you absorb pressure and cross your fingers that it just doesn't get as bad as what it has been in the previous season, and it's been very much damage limitation from the point where bizarrely it came on the 43rd minute and not the 3rd, given the nature of the game. But it just feels like the inevitable has come true today. But in the grand scheme of it, of course, we can all sit here on the back of this game and say, well, this was never going to be pivotal to how Everton's season panned out. And as much as you've got to play these teams, we realistically, looking at those next 6 games leading up to Christmas, you probably do look at Brentford next Sunday and say, well, that is clearly a lot bigger in terms of Everton trying to salvage some form of points this side of the new year. But going into that now without Damari Gray, you'd have to say, looking at the nature of his injury, it looked like he knew instantly that he was in trouble. It looks like a pulled groin, and we're probably looking at a few weeks without him. Richarlison picking up a fifth yellow card today. We're without him next weekend, and we are realistically looking at Rondon, Iwobi, all playing next weekend. And if you offer me a point now away from home against one of the Premier League's newcomers, I'll probably snap your hand off. And that's, yes, incredibly disappointing, but...
How desperate a situation are they in now? In your,
how
many points are we on? What is that, 15 points now?
Yeah, I honestly don't think what you're alluding to. I honestly don't think that comes into the conversation at the moment. And the main two reasons for that is that I've seen how bad the rest of the league are as we look at a Premier League table at the moment that have got some god awful sides in it, and we've obviously got some good players to come back into this.
Some people listening to this, they're saying, "Well, we are one of them." At the moment, we are one of those sides. We haven't won for 2 months. We played teams like Watford and Wolves. Been ahead against Watford, and we ultimately got beat by them 5-2. It's not. Yeah. It's not as if up until the last 2 or 3 games we've had a brutal run of fixtures. We've been just as bad as anyone really over the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think you have to make a pretty hard argument to suggest that Everton are one of what. I know this is the most depressing podcast ever, but we are not one of the worst 5 or 6 teams in the league, for example. You could suggest that we are right now, but that is without all of these players that we are hoping are going to come back and come back strongly. But again, it's talking about how bad we are and the fact that we're not quite as bad as other teams is not necessarily what we want to be sitting here and talking about. And I think it's just, from a big picture point of view, you can look back and... we'll do this every time we get beat or drop points against poorer sides than us. At the amount of money and the amount of time that we've come to see a team that we're looking at now, we just think it's really hard to care about you 11 lads on the pitch. And I think
just watching Fabian Delphi for that second goal. He, after all the praise he gets last week, he gets out to Rodri and then he turns his back on the shot and just cowers away from it.
If you watch them coming out for the second half, that nothing about that goal or the third goal that we've just seen from Bernardo Silva would shock you at all, because it looked like a team. The team looked like how the fans would feel at half time at the Etihad there, where you're 1-0 down, you've got absolutely nothing up your sleeve, and if anything it's only going to get worse. We're allowed to think like that, and professional footballers aren't, obviously. And don't get me wrong, I've seen Everton throw the towel in to a larger extent in the past, and I've seen it this season as well. But I think to go back to the point where we're looking back at 5 years of false dawns and that kind of lack of progression, I'm looking now at the next 18 months to 2 years. No one could convince you that it's going to get significantly better than how it is at the moment. Whether that's because you think the players aren't good enough, whether that's because you think Farhad Moshiri's not intelligent enough as a football club owner to progress us, or whether you think the manager's not simply up to it. And to be honest, on evidence of the last 8 to 10 weeks, you could argue that any of those things are true. And I think from an Evertonian's point of view, we've spoken so much this season about being sort of disconnected and disengaged from the football team. And I think when you are in situations like the team is at the moment, coming off the back of games like we've just seen, where it was just the most obvious processional defeat ever, it's very hard to try and pick positives about where this is going to get better. And disappointingly, I think over the next 4 or 5 weeks, given the availability of players and given the nature of the opposition that we've got, I honestly don't think it is going to get better in the short term.
Yeah, it's really grim. Just on Everton's attacking play today as well. Brief moments though. There were chances on the counter-attack where we got the ball and went forward, and you thought if you picked the right pass here, you'd get in. Yeah. But not only did they constantly pick the wrong pass. The moment that summed it up was when Seamus... It's so bad, but it's funny. But Seamus Coleman picks the ball up in Manchester City's 6-yard box and ends up by the corner flag, trying to dig a cross out somehow from nowhere. But that's not really working, is it, at the moment? Gray obviously was early on, but he's come off the boil a little bit since he first started. Townsend's the same; he's not chipping in with goals anymore. Richarlison was tough job against today, but was pretty woeful for Al Gordon. nowhere near it really today as well. It's as much as we're shoddy in midfield and shoddy at the back, and we're not keeping clean sheets.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like scoring a goal at the moment either. How many games is that now? What is that? 3 games. We scored at Wolves, didn't we? At Wobie, but. No, in three of our last 4 games, we haven't scored a goal.
Yeah, it feels like all of the positive attacking moments are coming by chance as opposed to by design, doesn't it? And it's very hard on the back of watching an Everton team at Man City to try and... I can't sit here and say that there was no attacking plan today, because we've seen so many Everton teams go there and not really have an attacking plan. But I think on a big picture for this season, and I think it is because of the nature of how the manager seemingly wants to play, whereby we're able to absorb pressure. We're able to.
Oh, we know.
Well, that's the theory, isn't it? In terms of we are happy to afford other teams possession. Yes, again, that today's game was absolutely never going to be one where we were anywhere close to 50-50 of possession, but we look unhappy to have the ball. And that again,
on the ball.
Again, that's synonymous with a team who is happy to just be in the league. And I'm not saying that is Rafael Benitez's MO at all, because it's clearly not, and we all know where we want to be, and he'll give all of the spiel about wanting European football, but fuck, just looking at that team, look at someone like West Ham, for example, or I know they've had a disappointing result, but there's so many more teams who are on more of an upward trajectory than we are currently, and yeah, it is hard, because I'm hanging so much on the fact that Dominic Calvert-Lewin is so pivotal to how this team operates going forward. And I think it's probably games like that now, isn't there? And you'll forever have speculation about that lad because of how good he is. But if we were to lose Calvert-Lewin, that's essentially the style of team that you're looking at every week. But I think in terms of today's game, I think as soon as Demarai Gray goes off from an attacking point of view, you've got absolutely nothing, because as much as Richarlison is a capable finisher, when you've got Gordon, who's just, in my opinion, not ready yet, I'm not casting him out by any means, but he is absolutely not ready to take a pivotal role as an attacking player in a team that wants to challenge for Europa League or whatever we're aiming for this season. Andros Townsend's trying to do this kind of advanced central midfield role, which became the number 8 role. It's all very much thrown together going forward, and Demarai Gray is your link between what is left of your midfield and Richarlison. And as soon as he goes off, I mean, we're trying to score a goal away at one of the league's greatest ever teams, and we're taking Fabian Delph off and bringing Salomon Rondon on. I actually got one of our mates today to take a photo of that moment, because I thought, if ever I'm happy in life and need bringing down a peg or two, I'm going to use that in future as a realisation of what Everton means. And at the moment, given the nature of the squad, that is what it means at present.
It's just grim being here again, isn't it? In this situation, it's even at the start of the campaign, we sort of thought, this might be all right, but yeah, it's really, really heavy. But we've got to get on the move anyway. We've got to get back home from the lakes. Any final thoughts? You're excited to see Rondon, Townsend, Iwobi and Gordon. In tandem together at Brentford next week. I mean, just in all seriousness about that game, I think if you look at that week of fixtures as a trio, or maybe a double header between Brentford and the derby, and you can say Yerry Mina can play one game, Decore can play one of those games. It's horrible to say, but you've sort of got to say the Brentford game's more important at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, well, in that breath, do you risk one of those? Were we talking about Decore being potentially back for that Brentford-Liverpool kind of 4 or 5 days? Yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, and we've got absolutely no substance to hang this on, but I don't know why we say that we need him back for the derby, or we need him back for the derby, because the reality of derby games in the last 20 years is that we probably don't win them. Brentford, even at this current state, is a game that is potentially winnable, but I don't think I'm being massively pessimistic when I say that a point is looking like a good result there next weekend, because they're a team who are capable of scoring goals. They'll cause us far more problems than we will cause them, and I think you kind of just do have to to take Everton's attacking capability with a pinch of salt at the moment and say we are in. There is no way we score 2 goals at Brentford next week. No way.
You're sort of writing off the games against, City, Liverpool, Chelsea already at this point, aren't you?
You have to. You have to, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we had a crack at Mashiri in the past, haven't we, for kind of having low expectations about going into big games, but that was because the team we felt at that time was particularly ready to kick on, ready to compete, and ready to go up against the biggest sides in the league, and we are absolutely not at the moment. We need to just find points from anywhere, and Brentford is that opportunity, and albeit depleted, quite frankly, we need to find a way to do it.
Yeah, we won't leave it there. We have got to get on the move. Cheers for everyone listening. Sorry it's a bit shorter than usual, but spirits are low. Not got tons more to add. I'm sure with some time to reflect and some time to think about it in the week, we'll do some more analysis on the shows. But cheers for listening as ever. That's been your post-match reaction for City 3, Everton 0. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll speak to you again very soon.